Great Scott! I can't believe we're podcasting again. Chewie, what's the date?
It's August.
No! What year is it?
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Ah! It's time to ham up.
Oh, I gotta really try hard.
Shut it down!
Somehow it's the best.
After the credits.
A YumChunks podcast.
YumChunks!
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of After the Credits, a YumChunks podcast, where we will be discussing Back to the Future, the musical.
The musical?
The musical.
Oh.
And to do that, we have Matt Chewie with me here today in a very special episode where he's returned from Europe, having conquered the continent, and more importantly, has seen Back to the Future, the musical, just as I have, and we're going to talk about it.
Yes.
In all its glory.
Well, I gotta say, it's great to be back. This is going to be a very different episode. Not a normal chunk fire, not a normal review. I know we've talked about musicals and stage shows and plays, but I don't think we've done an episode on one before, have we?
No, I don't think. I think the most, or the closest we've gotten is we talked about The Cursed Child or something. Maybe you mentioned that. Or maybe there was like was it the Beetlejuice musical? You talked about at length.
Oh yeah,
does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it's come up in Chunkfire before, and you've come to see several shows that I've worked on, and I've asked you your opinions and whatnot. So we've had a little, little bit here and there
discussions, but this will be a more dedicated episode about Back to the Future the musical.
Right.
So if you're a fan of the movie, stay tuned. Because it's based on that.
Yes, and it hasn't even hit Broadway yet, so this is hot off the theater world press the stove oven straight out of the. Anyway,
it's undercooked even, which is a good thing we're doing the chunk fire to get it all. Well, at least medium rare.
Yeah, it might actually be undercooked. We can talk about that. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're jumping into the future, if you will.
We are.
So
we need to, before we go back to the future, we need to stay in the present.
We have to go forward to the past.
Okay, we need to go forward to the past, where we'll talk about your exciting journey to Europe.
Hello, everyone. Chewie here. This next section of After the Credits is very long. So, if you don't really care to hear about my Europe trip, feel free to skip to the 1 hour and 11 minute mark of this episode. And now back to the show. Okay, so, for the listeners, if there are any, I'm 35 years old, and this is my first time ever leaving the country, which is a little embarrassing because...
Wait, not even to Mexico?
Exactly.
Wow.
Which is an hour drive from where I live, and I have never even crossed over the border. So this trip, a little background, my wife, Maeve, her family is basically like 100% Irish, and they've visited several times, and we've been trying to take a trip to Ireland for a few years now, but... things have happened, pandemics and hospitalizations, etc. So it was a trip that kept getting postponed. So there was a lot of planning and a lot of talking about it. And during the later planning, we're like, we're going all the way to Europe. Can we, I would love it if we could go see some other things while we're in Europe. So what started as a 3-week Ireland trip turned into a 4-week Europe trip. Maeve and I decided to tack on a week at the beginning. So, let's see. This is the part where I mentioned off-cast right before this, where I get overwhelmed and I don't know what to talk about because, like I said, it was 4 weeks long.
Yeah, I can relate. I took a similarly long trip to Europe that I talked about on the cast. And yeah, it's sort of hard to know where do I even begin. So how about we just kind of frame it, give us a roadmap. What are all the different places you visited, at least countries and maybe even cities?
Yeah. All right. So We started with, well, our travel day. Our first travel day was, by the way, I hate travel days. I like flying when it's just a few hours. But it's 4 hours to Chicago, and then big layover, and then 8 hours to Dublin, and then a couple hours layover, and then an hour and a half to London. So we were, by the time we reached our destination in London, we were awake for like 40 hours, like including packing the night before. So that was miserable. But I had Spider-Man No Way Home to watch on the way there, and it kills some time, which is great because I've seen it a bunch of times, and I can doze off in the middle and hit pause and not worry about what's going on in the movie. So now, I don't know if you've heard, but international travel right now is kind of in chaos. It's and I don't know if you experience any of this, but just like how every industry right now is, staffing shortages and etc.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was real nervous at each airport that we went to, seeing in the baggage claims just piles and piles and piles of lost baggage. So we got lucky with our baggage up until we didn't. My checked bag was lost on our very last flight, from the shortest flight, the one from Dublin to London. And if you're a long-time listener, then because we had a whole episode about it. I'm a very sick person, and that baggage had my medicine in it.
Oh shoot!
Yeah. So I had 2 weeks worth of medicine in my carry-on, right? But all the rest of my medicine was in the checked bag, and there was one particular medicine that I actually forgot to put in my carry-on, which was stupid, but I take a bunch of medicine, so I missed one. I forgot, and it. To cut, long story short, if I don't take them all, weird things happen. I get weird symptoms, and this particular one makes me kind of have meltdowns if I don't take it. So, so we're arriving, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it, and we're trying to contact British Airways and figure it out, and we're doing the lost baggage app thing, and 1 minute it says, "We found your baggage, it's on its way." The next minute it changes to "still looking, we're calling," whatever. So it was a whole thing. So London was kind of we did a lot of cool stuff, but also it was in between it was hours of us dealing with this super stressful situation.
Right. So were you able to get replacement meds while?
Well, yeah. So that's the thing is So first of all, our first place we stayed at was an Airbnb. It was an apartment near Piccadilly Circus, and it was actually like a block away. It was basically right behind Buckingham Palace. And for the few days that we were in London, we were like, "Oh, hey, Buckingham Palace is right there. We should go look at it and take pictures or whatever." And we kept putting it off. It's just right there. It's right around the corner. We'll just, at some point, walk right around the corner and go look at it. And we never did. Yeah. But yeah, so to answer your question, we were, Maeve being the smart one in our marriage, was, handle it like a champ, while I was kind of just, melting down. But basically making phone calls to the airport, and then making calls to family and the doctors, and be like, what can we do here? So she got some advice from some family who live in Ireland, oh, hey, they have these doctors' clinics. You can pay a reasonable fee to go get an appointment at a doctor's clinic. Meanwhile, we're buying some outfits, because most of my clothes were in that checked bag, from Amazon to deliver to a locker, which ended up just being a liquor store. Which was her idea. So we got overnighted some clothes, because I'm a large fellow, and nobody sells clothes in my size in Europe. So that was an issue. We had to figure that out. But I ended up one of the days there, actually the day that I saw Back to the Future, we had to go to this clinic and explain the situation, and like they wouldn't take my my US prescription, so we had to like go to this clinic and get it re-prescribed. They re-prescribed it, and then we had to go find somewhere we could get the prescription filled. And the one that I was like completely missed, like, oh wait, no wait, they had that one, but the other ones that I was going to run out of, they didn't have the medicine. And they're like, oh yeah, well, we can get it shipped to you in like a week or so. I'm like, we're going to be, I don't even know where we're going to be in a week. So, because distress, we were on vacation for 4 weeks and we didn't stay in any one location for more than 3 nights. So we're like, we're traveling around Europe and this is crazy and this is a situation. But basically, the last night that we were there, we're trying to figure out, like, basically what we were able to do is we were like, all right, let's get a hold of the doctors in America and see if we can get Maeve's family to pick up the medicine, because remember, we were going to just do Ireland for 3 weeks, but Maeve and I decided to go a week early. We're like, if we could get her to get the medicine, then she can fly over and bring it to us. So that was what the plan was, right?
Okay.
And then on the last night at like 9 o'clock, we were going to go out for dinner, but we had been out all day, and we're like, you know what, let's just go crash at the Airbnb and let's order in. And we ordered food, and then we get a ring from the door. I go downstairs, and it's like 9 or 10, and this 19, 20-year-old something is standing outside our Airbnb in the rain, and he has my checked bag just out of nowhere.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I have no idea.
They didn't like call you in advance or anything?
Well, several times they had called us and they're like, oh yeah, we have it, a courier's on their way, but like that was a day before. And then like we called later and they're like, we don't know where it is. It's just, I don't know how to describe the absolute like fumbling chaos of
weird.
I know, right? So it just.
So did you invite this young chap in to thank him for his?
He seemed like he was on drugs. So I just said thanks. Okay, bye. Anyway, so I did end up getting my bag back, and then because of Maeve's efforts to get some medicines replaced, I then had too much medicine, and then also my mother-in-law, back in America, has now this huge giant stash of all my medicines at her house. So, it's better to be over prepared, but I'm sitting here like, my brain's not working right, going, oh my god, what do we do, breaking down, crying and having freakouts. And Maeve's just like, I'm gonna try basically just fire everything, trying to solve the problem from like 6 different angles. So yeah, that was a really stressful way to start the vacation off, and we're like, oh god, I hope it doesn't get any more stressful than that.
So you were 3 days into the trip by the time you finally got your stuff back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had been off one of them for that plus the travel, which was basically 2 days. So I was in real bad shape by the time I got it back, but I got back on it and I was okay. So I was like, all right, I'm not going to die and I'm mentally functioning again. So good. We're all right. So that was our time in London. But like I said, it was back and forth between doing tourist stuff and then being on hold on the phone with the airport and doctors and insurance and all these things. So
it's good that you were still able to do some stuff. I mean, because otherwise, you're just gonna sit in the Airbnb stressing. But so it's good that between you and Maeve, you were able to, either she was able to keep a cool head and say, okay, well,
yeah,
we've done everything we can, or I don't know,
And that's why I married her, because she's, like I said, she's the brain in our marriage. She's really on top of those kind of things. The logistical. Yeah, right. We got to solve this. We got to figure stuff out, especially when I'm not physically and mentally in the best state.
Sure.
But yeah. Anyway, so that is all going on, and in between that, we're trying to enjoy London.
What did you actually get to enjoy?
So our format of the 3 big cities that we went to were all basically bus tours. So we. And they were all the same company, Big Bus. I'm sure that you probably saw it driving around a few times. Did you ever do any of them?
No, I didn't do that kind of stuff. I if I think if I was under the same kind of like maybe time constraints in the different cities, I would have. But
Right, and that's the thing, is that we were under pretty intense time
Right.
constraints. So we went. We bought the 2-day pass, and basically our format for the 3 big cities that we went to. The first day, the bus goes. It stops on average. There's about a dozen stops or so. I think London had like close to 20.
oh wow,
But it's a route, and there's different routes that you can take, and they overlap, kind of like the subway. And you can hop on, and at any point you can hop off at any stop, hang out there, and then get back on the bus and continue. And they have headphone jacks, so they have a pre-recorded guide, spiel that you can listen to. So our first day, we do the entire tour, go around the whole city, see everything, and then the second day we actually use it as transport and go actually get off the bus and walk around the places that we wanted to see.
okay.
So day one was a lot of that, and we went all around. We went over the Tower Bridge, by the Parliament Building, Big Ben, the Eye, Buckingham Palace. Oh yeah, we did drive by it. Piccadilly Circus, all the stuff. The street where Sherlock Holmes lived, if he was real, there.
Right.
J.M. Barrie's house, the dude who wrote Peter Pan. So it basically anything that's within a reasonable distance is going to drive by it. So it's a really good way to just see everything, like shotgun everything that you need to see, which is great, because it's like, if you want to see all the stuff, like if you watch any movie that has London in it, like it's going to drive by the thing in the movie.
Right, and like you were saying, if you're under that time constraint, then you get to see more in a compressed amount of time. Plus, you then get to kind of pick out what you liked and maybe make notes on what you didn't get to see but wish you could have, and then you come back, right?
Right.
You spend a little more time and gotta do a deeper dive.
Yes. So I gotta pause real quick, and I gotta tell you about Nando's. All right. I don't know if you saw any of my pictures of Nando's.
Doesn't ring a bell. I was looking at your Instagrams, but that doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. So there's this chain restaurant that's in Europe called Nando's, and it's basically a chicken restaurant that uses like South African recipes and spices, particularly peri peri spice, which is Maeve knew about it because it was a meme for several years. Me and the boys going for a wee cheeky Nando's was a meme. I never caught that meme, but she knew all about it. But also, I don't know if you ever started watching Atlanta, but
yeah, I've seen the first 2 seasons.
I don't know if it was season 2 or the most recent season, but there's a season where they go on tour in Europe, and they're at some rich guy's house, and he has, like, you remember in Richie Rich when Richie Rich has a McDonald's in his house? Like, this guy has a Nando's in his house, and the show just stops for like 10 minutes while this guy explains how much he loves Nando's. And so we're like, before the trip even, we're like, we gotta go find Nando's. And luckily there were a few around town. So, and earlier when I said that instead of going out, we ordered in, it's luckily we did, because if we had gone out, we would have missed that guy who showed up unannounced with my bag. But we ordered in Nando's. But the night before, we went to Nando's, and it was the first of many, many Nando's trips throughout the 4 weeks that we were there. But yeah, we did the bus tours. We saw all the sights, got out, walked around the Tower Bridge, Tower of London. Apparently, they had just ripped out all the lawns around Tower of London and replaced it with wildflowers. So I saw that. What else? And then also, on this big bus thing, if you buy a 2-day pass, a 48-hour pass, you can get like a discount to upgrade to a boat tour. So we did that in London and Paris. So it's cool. An hour. London had an hour tour up and down the Thames, which is great. And I love being on boats. That's great. So
that's cool. I mean, so did you get to go on the Seine then?
On the Seine, yeah. So in London we went up and down the river, and that was basically that was basically our first day. And the second day, we had tickets to Back to the Future, a matinee. But before and after that, we kind of just walked around a lot of the parts of the city. The park that we went to was real big. And what was the name of it? What's the big park in London? Wait. Let's see. Wait. Did you go any parks in London?
I went to like 80 parks in London and Paris.
Goodness. It wasn't St. James. It was Hyde Park. We went and we walked around Hyde Park, which was gigantic. Looked at some wildlife, some really strange ducks. I don't even think there were ducks. But yeah, to that, had to go to the doctors, which is not something I was expecting to have to do on vacation. And then went to see Back to the Future, which we'll talk about later. Got Nando's again. But yeah, so we basically, London was, like, if we were going to cut anything, it was going to be London. And I was like, I just want to go. I just want to go take my picture in front of the things that are on TV and in movies, and then like move on. That's basically what it was. But we did get to go some good walking around and see the sights, and had a nice time there. So we spent 3 nights there. Moving on, after London, we took the underwater train to Paris.
The channel.
The Eurostar, which goes under the channel. Have you been on that?
No, I the route I took just didn't make sense for me to take the channel.
Gotcha. So that I thought that was going to be scary, and let me tell you, I did not even realize that we had gone under the channel after we did. Because you go on these trains and you go through tunnels a bunch, and every few minutes you'll pass through a tunnel, and at some point during the ride, which was, I would say, probably a 3-hour-ish ride, may even notice that the cars in the countryside were driving on the other side of the street. I'm like, wait, are we in France? What the heck? When did we get to France? So we completely didn't even realize that we had traveled under the water. It happened so quickly. So France, we get there and we're like, all right, this is going to be the hard mode of the trip, because it's English is not the primary language here, and unlike you, I don't have any experience speaking French. What did I learn? I learned parlez-vous anglais, and well, I already forgot how to say I don't speak French.
Je ne peux pas.
Je n'ai pas parlé français. Je ne parle pas français.
That's good enough. Yeah.
It worked.
Well, did you? I mean, so my experience with in France is that everyone did speak English anyway, so it kind of put all my French skills to waste. To be honest, I mean, I used it as much as I could, but everyone I spoke to spoke English anyway.
We ran into a lot of people who didn't. I looked it up before we went, and I guess 20% of the population speaks English fluently.
In Paris or in France?
In Paris. That's the number that I found. So
I don't know if I believe that. My rate would have been like 80.
That's 1 in 5, and I think our experience was more than that. I would say it was probably 50-60% for us. So we took the Eurostar, and we were gonna, from the Eurostar, take the underground. Which we didn't end up taking. I forgot to mention that we took the underground in London a bunch. And by the way, I just need to say that, like, America needs to get it together with public transportation, because oh my god, it's such a great way to get around. We didn't end up taking it in Paris though, because when we got to the train station, we had to get to our Airbnb at a certain time, because it was one where the guy had to let us in, and this is embarrassing, but we couldn't figure out how to get to the underground platform at the train station. And this train station was super old, and I could tell that like there were signs where it's like, okay, if you want to get to level 3, you got to go to level 4 and then go down an escalator back to level 3, like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah, but like there were no signs in English, and it was super busy, and we're like, oh god, we got to get to the center of Paris by this time, or the guy's gonna not be there. And so that we ended up taking a cab. I ended up almost accidentally taking a fake cab, and that would have been really bad because apparently there are scammers everywhere in that city. So there was a super long taxi line outside of the train station, and then there's guys on the street that have cars that are dressed up to look like taxis. And I was like, hey, babe, there's no line over here. And she's like, that's obviously fake. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I look it up, and it's like, oh, yeah, every public transit center has scammers who are trying to... Basically, they get you in their cab, and then they try to charge you, like, 200 euros or whatever for your ride. But anyway, see, she's the smart one. But we get there, and we get to our place, and we get there at the middle at night. It's dark, and you know that you've been there, so you know that like a lot of the streets look the same, and all the buildings are super old. So to get into our Airbnb, you had to type the code in and open this big giant castle looking door. You go through. It's pitch dark inside, so you have to find the switch to turn on lights that only last for a certain amount of time. There's another door that you need a key. You go into the second lobby, and then in the second lobby, there's basically it's basically just a dumbwaiter. It's the smallest elevator I've ever seen. I
mean, things are in general more compact there.
Yeah.
One is just it's a city, right? I mean,
right.
New York is pretty compact too. But I do remember riding an elevator that was basically big enough for 2 people. And even then you're pushing it, like,
right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It was one of those. It was like being in a coffin, essentially. And so we're there in the middle of the night, and this guy's leading us up, and we have all of our luggage with us, you know, and Maeve looks at it and was like, nope, I'm taking the stairs. And I'm like, I'm not taking stairs. I'm tired. So I cram myself and our bags all into this tiny little, like, there's no and it's negative space. Once I get myself and all our bags in there, like, that's it. That's all of the room in this box, right? I can barely squeeze my finger over to hit the button to take us up. So it goes up to the 6th floor, which is really the 7th floor, because in Europe, the first...
No, it's just France.
Is it just France? No, it was like this in some places in Ireland too.
Okay.
But the first floor is floor 0. So if you go to a basement, it's floor -1. If you go to the what would be the 2nd floor in America, it's floor 1, which actually makes more sense.
It does make more sense.
Yeah.
But that's to be expected because Americans are dumb.
Yeah, exactly. So we're up on what for us would be the 7th floor, and then from there we have to climb a very narrow spiral staircase to get up to what I guess was the attic that was converted into an apartment, which is where we were staying. So after that, Maeve took the elevator after that.
That's a long climb. So what part of town were you staying in?
A block away from the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, okay. So on the sort of like the west-ish, kind of west-north, kind of on the inner ring, or like the Isle of Paris, Isle de Paris, or was it?
Let me see. Hang on. I'm pulling up stuff here. All right. So, yeah, like it. I mean, I don't know. It was right. It was literally a block away from the Eiffel Tower. And when we got there, we're like, oh my gosh, this place is crazy. And then we open the window, and it's like the most picturesque, beautiful movie-like view of the Eiffel Tower that you could ever possibly have.
Oh man, that's awesome.
It's like that scene in Ratatouille where he goes, "I'm in Paris," you know, and it's like you see the skyline and it's right there. It's like it's so close that like when like where our bed was, you wake up and you open your eyes, and like out the window, the Eiffel Tower is just looming over you. It's just like staring at you.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was great, especially at nighttime when it lights up and sparkles and does its
Yeah.
crazy thing. It basically, like, the lights were shining into our room. Basically, that's how close we were. That was great. So,
Awesome.
so we had planned on going to Disneyland Paris. Keyword planned. We had tickets and we had a reservation. But to make a long story short, there was an issue with our reservation, which is a thing now. If you want to go to Disney parks, you have to buy your ticket and reserve the day that you want to go in advance. And once reservations for that day is gone, like, yeah, you can't go that day. Like, you can't just roll up to a Disney park anymore. You have to reserve. So we had an issue with our reservation. We were checking, the night we were there, we were going to go the next day to hop on a train and go to Disneyland Paris. And once we realized it was messed up, we were like, oh my God, we can't go. Like, we came all the way here. We can't go now.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I was like, well, I was pretty upset initially, but I got over it pretty quickly because once you realize, there's nothing we can do. Like, they're not going to let us in the door,
Right. Yeah.
Maeve called up, got our money back for the tickets, so
good.
that was good. We had not planned on. We had not bought our bus tour tickets yet. We were going to do that evening as well. And we're like, all right, well, you know what? We have an extra day in Paris. Cool. We're in Paris. Like, we have 2 days here now. So we basically did the same thing that we did in London. We bought the 2-day tickets, which came with an upgrade, like the River Seine upgrade. So day one, we went on the bus. We did the whole bus tour. And got to see everything that day that we wanted to see. And then on the next day, we went to... There was a museum right next to the Eiffel Tower that had It had a display about like African cultures. It was one of those museums where they rotate out what the whole museum is about every so often. We went to the Louvre, which was great. I loved how the building was laid out. Like, because, it's like the super old building, and it's massive, and there's this big courtyard. The courtyard with the pyramid. And it's I found it, like, from just like architectural standpoint, like how they had hollowed out the courtyard and then built over it again. And so the courtyard is this underground complex of restaurants and gift shops and facilities. And then once you go down into the courtyard underground, the underbelly, you then from there go back up into the building from below. Right? Like, you don't enter the building from any of the doors on the outside. They're all blocked off, basically.
Right. And when I went there, I don't know if they told you this or you read about that, but when they did that kind of excavation, if you will, they discovered all kinds of new historical artifacts.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it was crazy. And it's not even that old that they did that. It was maybe maybe like 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
not even that, or something. It was fairly recent in terms of modern history, but they discovered all these old artifacts from hundreds of years ago. Like, oh my God, this was under our feet the whole time.
We're gonna need another Louvre.
Which is, and that's one of the things. Just, I don't know, for me, just Europe in general, it's just the whole thing is just so much history.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Paris is a super old city, so it's just the whole thing is historical.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that just overall on the trip, I really loved seeing how the old stuff and the new stuff really clash, like, and how, like, a lot of stuff that's modern is on the bones of something super old. Like the building we stayed in, like, it's got modern amenities, it's got refrigerator, Wi-Fi, everything, but like you can tell this building has been standing for so long, and the Louvre is a great example of that because it's got the modernization, but it also has the really old parts of it that look like they probably did when it was built. And by the way, that place is massive. We only were able to explore about half of it before it closed. Like, we gave ourselves like 3 hours to explore it, and between that and just being tired and like, because it's such a maze and there's lots of stairs and everything, and we're just like, oh my gosh, it's like the final boss of museums. Like, I can't describe it in any way. It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it can be overwhelming too, because you're walking around for 3 hours and you're like I want to keep looking at all this stuff, but there's only so much you can absorb and that kind of thing. So yeah,
it's exhausting.
Like you're saying, you only had so many days, couple days in Paris, so you're like, well, yeah, like I want to keep going, but at the same time, like there's so much more of Paris to see. Like I have, you kind of, it's hard choices to make.
Right. But we saw a lot of that. We, of course, because of the person that I am, had to go to Notre Dame. So I went there, and honestly, that being closed to the public was more disappointing. I knew it was going to be closed, but it's honestly more disappointing than not getting to go to Disneyland Paris. But we went around, took pictures. We crossed the bridge to the other side of the Seine and looked for a cafe to eat at, and then we basically found just a really cool shopping and dining district that we decided to just kind of bar hop and look around and go into the shops. And there was a really cool candy shop that had gummy bears the size of like pickles, and we went bar hopping and had some really good food and had too many drinks and got a little lit. And I came to find out later, in Les Mis, that's where the barricades were built.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's fun.
I everything is all Notre Dame branded, but I looked at the pictures afterwards, and I'm like, oh my god, yeah, I got drunk at the barricades.
yeah. Well, that's cool that you did kind of get a walk around like that, because one of my favorite things, it was just kind of walking around, every corner has some cute little cafe or little eatery, and everyone's kind of out on the street eating or drinking, and it just feels like it's a very a casual party all of the time, the most casual of parties.
Well, my favorite part of Paris came after that. We had our boat tour tickets, and we really wanted to do a night boat tour, but it doesn't get dark until 11 o'clock. In the summer. So we were really trying to time it so that we could get on that very last boat tour, which started at 10:30, but we wanted to get there so that we ended up on the last one, but we didn't miss it. And when we got there, the line was super long, and we're like, oh my god, I don't know if this is going to work. But
did everyone have the same idea?
Yeah, but it ended up working perfectly. Not only did it end up, we got on the boat, we were, the first to get on the boat, and it was a double-decker boat, so we were, we got to go up to the second story of the boat and get our pick of seats. So it was perfect, and and it was just getting dark right as the boat took off. And I gotta say, the Seine at night on a weekend is the place to be. It was my favorite part of the trip, because as you're going up and down the river and you're seeing all this historic stuff, there's the Eiffel Tower there, it's all lit up, it's beautiful. We sailed by Notre Dame, which is lit up, and then just along the shore first of all, there's party boats going up and down both sides. That's their thing. That on the weekend, that's equivalent to going to the club. There's just party boats. They go up and down the river, and the boats have all transparent walls, so all the boats have their own party lights, so the area around the Seine is just lit up. You can hear music blasting from all these boats. It's funny because I didn't think this would be true because it's stereotypical, but we heard so much Daft Punk, because they're French. And then there's just college kids who are just on the shores of the river, just bringing their boomboxes and bottles of wine and just dancing. They're just living in the moment. They're just we're talking about just man, there's not a lot of places at home where you can just roll up somewhere and bring your own drinks and your own music and just kind of just be, and just so many places here you gotta pay to be somewhere. You can't just exist somewhere. And
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? And it was just the atmosphere was just so, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I
don't know if I saw that something exactly meeting that description, but there is definitely like kind of more public areas where people would just like go there and hang out. Like, just like I remember seeing just along the Seine one day, like people kind of just longboard skateboarding, but like doing tricks.
Yeah.
But not in the way that you would expect. Like, oh, you go to a skate park in San Diego and it's like all the, I mean, you know, they're all, you know, kids, I guess, but they were more just like just chilling. I don't know. And some of them, and then people would like watch them.
Yeah.
I mean, like they would like sit on the bench and drink their wine and have their sandwich or lunch and just watch these people casually doing their skateboarding stuff. It was a different atmosphere.
There's no one there like, hey, you can't skate here. There's no one there like, oh, you can't have an open alcohol container.
Right.
Like you can't sit like right on this railing where you could easily fall into the river. Like people are just doing that, and it's like, yeah, okay, if I want to sit here and I want to get drunk and accidentally fall into the river and drown, like that's my right to do so. Like you know,
well,
it's like,
so then because one of the things I love walking on the Seine, or just like along it, and people would just be like their legs kind of hangling, you know, dangling.
That's a good word. Keep that in your pocket.
I will. And just kind of like they're just hanging out there, and maybe with like their significant other, and just enjoying the river, watching boats pass by, watching people on the other side, like, yeah,
stuff. So that was, I mean, more or less Paris. So we, you know, like we saw the sights, we saw the Arc de Triomphe, and just a bunch of super old buildings and all the things that, you know, we did the bus tour. So we did that. Yeah,
you got to see the most famous of the things.
Yeah, and then the most famous of the things we got out and walked around and visited. So, you know, but that boat tour was really, it was one of the highlights of the entire trip, but it was my favorite part of Paris for sure, just because it was like, just being in that environment and being in the atmosphere on a weekend, and everybody's young and partying, and nobody's bothering anybody else, and it's just, everybody's just living. They're doing their thing.
That's cool.
Yeah. I love that. So then after that, next day, we had our 3-country travel day, because we woke up in Paris, got back on the Eurostar, dropped us off in London, and then we took the tube to a different airport than we used earlier, and then from there we flew to Dublin, when we ended up in Dublin in the evening. So a full day of travel, 3 different countries. That was just wild to me. Like, my little American brain couldn't handle that. So that was super cool. Stayed at a nice hotel in Dublin, and that's where we met up with Maeve's family, her immediate family, her parents and her brother, who were at the same hotel. They were just like, we got there at like 10 o'clock and we were really tired, so we just went straight to our room and didn't bother to say hi to anybody. Met up with everyone for the hotel breakfast buffet, which, God, I love hotel breakfast buffets. Like, you know, the really good ones where they just bring out the big vats of scrambled eggs and bacon and sausage, and you know, it's Ireland, so they have all the fixings for a full Irish breakfast. I had blood pudding, which is, well, it's not pudding. It looks like sausage, but it's not sausage either. Because have you had it?
Is it the same thing as? I don't think I've ever had something called blood pudding. I was thinking of blood sausage.
Well, it looks like sausage, and it kind of, you know, it's cooked in like a sausage and sliced, so it's patties. Yeah, blood pudding, blood sausage, more or less the same thing. I was not expecting it to be crumbly and dry, because it doesn't look that way. I liked the flavor, but I didn't like the texture, so I said, yeah, I'm okay. I'm all right with, I've tried it. I've tried blood pudding, and I'm good now. Black pudding is another name for it. Blood sausage, blood pudding.
I think that's maybe something else. Blood sausage, I think, is not the same thing. Anyway, yeah, okay.
Anyway,
keep going.
I tried that, but I was like, I'll stick with everything else on this buffet. Same thing. So, you know, Dublin was the smallest of the 3 big cities. It's the largest city in Ireland, on the island. So I was like, oh, okay, this is a change of pace. It's but it's another river city. They didn't have a boat tour, but we did do the bus tour. We went by the Guinness factory, and I don't know what else we do in Dublin. Temple Bar, where they have it's not a bar, it's just an area called Temple Bar, but then there's a bar in Temple Bar that is called Temple Bar. We hung out there, saw the sights, and it was just kind of like a place for us to all meet up and just kind of like, hey, we're all on vacation together now. Let's we're gonna start here, and then from there we transitioned into our Ireland portion of the trip, which was most of the trip, and there's a lot to talk about, so I'm gonna try to shotgun through this. Right, we started in Dublin, spent a few days there, did the boat tour, and then from there, let's see. We did. We rented a car and we drove to Killarney, which is out in the country. Everything's out in the country, so I'm not going to even say that. We drove to Killarney, and we first night in Killarney we stayed on a literal farm, and it's the most beautiful. Like it was something out of a storybook or a fairy tale. This cottage that's on this farm. And we met Farmer Donald, who was just farming, and that was his name, Farmer Donald. At some point, part of the family went out to go do something, went to a store to get groceries or whatever, and so we wandered around the farm, and there's just a bunch of cows, and we went to one of the fences, and there's a cow hanging out, and me and Maeve and her brother Connor are talking about like, oh, I heard that like if you play certain types of music, cows respond to it. So we're like being stupid and playing music on our phones, and we're like, all right, let's try classical music. And we tried that, and nothing happened. And then we tried LMFAO, and one of the cows came by, liked LMFAO. And then at some point, I was like, all right, let me try. And I put on the it happened to be Maeve and I's anniversary that day that we were on the little farm, which was nice. And Maeve and I came back later, and I put on the orchestral instrumental cover of "I Can't Help Falling in Love with You" from Elvis, which is the song that Maeve and I walked down the aisle to. But I put that on, and I was feeling it, so I just kind of started dancing to it. I was kind of just dancing along to the song, just kind of like swaying around like one of those wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube bands,
Yeah.
There's a video of it. It's on my Instagram. And then all the cows started flocking towards us. So yeah, so go on my Instagram and look at this video of me flailing around idiotically, and all the cows just coming over and wondering, what the heck is this guy? What is he doing? What is this? But it worked, so I'm the cow whisperer, as some of my alums commented on my post. So we did that. Yeah, so staying on a farm, that was great. The next day we went into the town of Killarney, which it's like we were actually staying in the town, like on the main street. And all these towns are like, it's crazy because I can see like, oh, okay, like, bring everything back to Disney, but like, Main Street USA at Disneyland is modeled after a turn-of-the-century American town, which, early America is modeled after Europe, obviously. So, like, yeah, like, all the towns, they look like a Main Street USA, right? So it's like,
yeah.
It's the same proportions, and all the shops are the same sizes, and we're staying, like, in an apartment, like, above the main street, and you just walk outside, and, like, it felt like this is a theme park, but it's real, like, So we were walking around there. I got to stop. And did you ever go to a Spar in Europe?
A what?
It's a convenience store called Spar. Basically, they don't have AM/PM or 7-Eleven. They have Spar and they have Cost Cutter. And this is where I got to go to our first Spars. One of several Spars that we went to on our trip. But yeah, it's like a convenience store, grocery store type place. And they're on every corner in Ireland, but they also have a hot food bar where they serve sausage rolls and hash browns and all manner of yummy sausagey foods. So I had many a breakfast at Spar. So it's cool. Just, you wake up and you walk outside and you're on Main Street and you just walk around and walk into a convenience store and buy a sausage roll. I loved how all the towns were very just like designed around how people live, like how it just like it's convenient. Like if you need, like, everything that you need is nearby, and if it's not, like, it's easy to get somewhere else, Anyway, we stayed there for a few days. We went to Ross Castle, which, the first of many castles and ruins that we got to see. It's funny that we went it's against a lake, and we went on another boat tour. And on the boat tour, the guy was telling us, like, so, like, at some point, Oliver Cromwell tried to attack this castle, and they had fortified, like, 3 sides of it, but not the side facing the water. So, like, it got taken over. And everybody was just laughing at how dumb the design of this castle was. But that was good. We took a horse-drawn carriage around the forests around the castle. That was fun, too. And then, after we moved out of Killarney, we went to Slane, which is in the middle of nowhere, because Maeve wanted to go to a music festival, and I did not, because I'm too old to mosh. I don't think I would survive. Anyway, we stayed in this place for one night. I stayed in a little cottage in a valley, overlooking a valley covered in sheep, and I just kind of had, like, my zen, and that was great. She went to her concert, came back sore, because you do. That's how you do a concert, right? If you don't come back in pain, then you haven't done it right. Or a music festival. And then from there... Oh, gosh. Okay. All right. Then from there, where did we go after that? We went Slane, and then we were like, all right, let's go to Belfast. But on the way to Belfast, we went to a place called Newgrange. Do you know Newgrange?
No, I don't.
Okay, Newgrange is the oldest man-made structure ever found. It's thousands of years old. It's older than the pyramids, and it basically looks like the house of the Teletubbies. It's a big grassy hill with, like, a stone structure underneath it, and you walk inside, and it's a tomb. It's a literal tomb. And so I got to go tomb raiding. And I had to, like, crawl through little crevices and, like, suck my gut in and, like, smash my way through these little passageways. And it's pitch dark in there, but our guide took us into this tunnel and into the center of this structure. And it's, like, there's ancient markings, and, like, he's explaining certain things about why this place exists. And then other times he's just like, see that thing there? Nobody knows why that's like that. We can't historians haven't figured it out yet. It's just like too old to figure stuff out. Yeah, right? Like, I was like, man, and before I was like, I want to go. I love Indiana Jones. I love Tomb Raider. I grew up loving Legends of the Hidden Temple. And I'm like, I always wanted to go somewhere super old and Tomb Raidery, and I got to, and so we did that.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was great. And then after that, we went to Belfast, which is where my dad-in-law was born and grew up in. Met up with some family there, some of his extended family. Went to another Nando's. We went to the Titanic Museum because the Titanic was built in Belfast.
Right. Yeah.
And the Titanic Museum was incredible. It's this giant multi-story building. It mixes, and it goes all the way back to like the beginnings of Belfast's, like, industrial period of, like, why is this the place that the Titanic got built? Like, because this certain type of grass grew and it was easy to build rope, and because it was easy to manufacture rope here, they started making mills that did this, and then from that it grew into a shipyard, and from this it grew into that, and then so it's a several hour long experience, and it mixes, like, multimedia. There's displays that have, like, projected people, and then, like, in the middle of this museum tour, there's a theme park ride, and so 1 minute you're going through and they're explaining how gantry cranes work, because that's how they build it. There's these giant arches, these steel arches that have, like, a slide, like a crane that slides, like, on one axis, and then the whole crane slides on another axis, and then there's a third axis that the crane can lower. So basically you have full range of being able to pick up anything and move it. So that's how they built the ships in their shipyard. So they're explaining that, you're watching little videos, you're looking at models of the gantries. It's very cleverly set up, so we're at certain key moments in the museum, there'll be a window that'll face the actual location of where whatever it is they're describing happened, out in the harbor. And then we go through, and then there's like, oh yeah, okay, so now get in line for the theme park ride. And it was basically Peter Pan. It was a ride where you ride around in a gantry crane, and it's suspended overhead. And so you get into this little car, and it's connected to a gantry just like the ones they used to build the Titanic. And what you're doing is you're going through show scenes, and it's lowering and raising like you're flying, and it's going through scenes of people building the Titanic. And there's audio, and there's projections, and there's full sets. I don't know if there were animatronics, but I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So like I definitely didn't miss Disneyland Paris by then, because I was not expecting to go on Titanic the ride, but that's exactly what we did. We went on Titanic the ride. Anyway, Titanic Museum was an unexpected highlight of the trip. I knew that we were going to the Titanic Museum, but I had no idea what was in store for me. And then there's a whole segment of, there's like a segment about pop culture, so there's of course a room about like the James Cameron movie and the other movies. And then the end, there's a whole sequence where it's like, about like explorers going into the wreckage, and there's like a room where the theater looks like you're underwater, and it's like an IMAX screen, and it shows the footage of them like going down to the depths, and you can go in and sit down, and the Titanic Museum was great.
Pretty cool. I didn't really know about that.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah. Oh my god, we're almost at an hour. Okay, I need to speed this up. I told you there's a lot. Okay, so from there, Titanic Museum. Okay, wait, but I'm like frantically going through my Instagram stories so that I can remember what order. Also, insert several pub visits and many fish and chips, because there's not a restaurant in Ireland that doesn't have fish and chips on their menu. Let's see, Belfast, the Titanic Museum. Okay, from there, we went down to the Glens of Antrim. So we took a road trip out of Belfast, and we saw the Glens, which are just these beautiful coastal valleys that, I mean, like, I don't know how to put this. It looks like fairies live there. Like, it's some of the most beautiful places that I've ever seen. Waterfalls and lush, magical forests that you walk through, and babbling brooks and leprechauns and whatnot. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, and also from there you can see Scotland. So I waved at Scotland. I didn't go there, but let's see what else. Yeah, we went to an old abandoned church that we found, and it's just like off this road, and you can get out your car and park it, and there's a lot of stuff like that where it's not like an attraction or anything. It's just like, oh, there's the ruins of an ancient church, and you can go in and you can poke around, and it's like, oh, this is like being in Tomb Raider. It's great, you know. What else did we do? We went, while we were in the Glens, we went to the Giant's Causeway. Are you familiar with the Giant's Causeway?
Yeah, I know that.
Okay, so we crawled around the Giant's Causeway, which was amazing. This big sounds stupid, but this big collection of rocks, but they're all like hexagonal, the super hexagons. So these big mass, basically, it's this line of hexagon rocks that goes from Ireland to Scotland, and it connects. So it's on both sides, but like on the shore, these big mounds of them, so you can climb all over them, which I did. I climbed to the top of them and ripped up my shoes, which I did not bring hiking shoes, which more on that later. Also that day we went to the Bushmills whiskey distillery, and we did whiskey tasting. We got flights, and that was fun. And also on the same day, we went down to a beach where there were caves, and I didn't know it because I don't watch Game of Thrones, but it was a common shooting location for Game of Thrones. And let's see. My sister, I sent a picture of it to my sister Andrea, and she said, oh gosh, something about a witch giving birth to a demon goblin baby or something. I don't know, but we went down to these caves, and we went all the way in the caves, and inside the darkest part of the cave, there was like an old dirty recliner, and someone had taped a bunch of plastic Nerf swords behind it. So that was funny. See, after that, oh yeah, okay, went back to Belfast. Then we split off with the family. They did their own thing. Maeve and I went out into the deep, 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 deep country, and we stayed in a cabin in the woods, which was cool and scary. And then we went to a place called Fintown, and Fintown is not a town. It's just many, 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 many miles or kilometers of country with farms and farmhouses every few miles or so. So there was like a farmhouse that had a little cottage that we stayed in. We had a peat farm, or a peat fire. We bought peat, which is what they burn in their stove ovens, but we bought some peat moss, and we built a fire in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the woods, and it's like clearing in the woods, and it was beautiful, and it was like lightly raining, but like we were out in the middle of nowhere, and the sky, like just a gajillion stars. I'd never seen satellites. I'd never seen satellites moving in the night sky, but I saw satellites. Jupiter, planets, like it was, oh my gosh, like I'd never seen so much stuff in the sky. And that was beautiful. What did we do after that? After that, we went to Derry. Have you watched Derry Girls yet?
I've seen like the first episode.
Oh, okay. We went to Derry. Went to Free Derry because, Derry had troubles. We went to the Free Derry Museum and learned about the troubles. And we went into the walled city. We walked around the walls. We saw the Derry Girls mural that was painted in the city. And there was like some kind of maritime festival going on that weekend. And the downtown area was just like crazy slammed and like streets blocked off. And if you tried to call a cab, it took 2 hours. So like we were like, we want to go to this, but like where we were staying there, like it had a view of like where the festival area was, so we just got to watch fireworks from our apartment that we were staying in. And then what did we do after Derry? After Derry, we went back to Dublin for a couple nights, and then when we were there, we took a bus to the middle of nowhere, and in the middle of nowhere, we found Tato Park. And Tato Park is Ireland's only theme park, and it is themed to a brand of Irish potato chips called Tato.
That's kind of what I was expecting you to say when you said Tato Park. I was
yes.
Like, this is their idea of a theme park.
Mr. Tato Man is their mascot, and it was like let's say it was like Wild Animal Park meets Legoland meets the Del Mar Fair. That's more or less what it was like.
Okay.
Yeah. Maeve just texted me and said Tato Man needs to be in the thumbnail. Yes, it will. But yeah, it was okay. So they had a big roller coaster and a couple small roller coasters. They had a kiddie area, which is where I actually spent most of the time. There was this little like steeplechase ride. It's like this slow moving roller coaster track that goes around these gardens, and you sit on like a plastic horse, and it moves slowly through these gardens, and there's no like restraints of any kind. There's nothing to prevent you from getting off the horse in the middle of the ride and just walking around the gardens. We walked up, and Maeve jumped on the horse and rode off, and I was like, there's like a teenage girl who's running the ride, and I'm like, are you not afraid that I'm going to break this horse? And she just shrugged and didn't say anything. So I rode it, and there's zoo exhibits, and there's a birds of prey show, but like it started pouring rain while we were waiting for the show, but then like right before the show the rain stopped, so like the bird trainer showed up and was like, all right, I guess we're doing the show. And there were only like 20 people in the audience, and so we all huddled together, and instead of using the stage, he just like stood directly in front of the little cluster of audience and gave the show from there. So that was really cool. But then it started pouring rain again in the middle of the show, and he just kept doing the show. Like, he's like, we'll pause the show. And he's like, does anybody want to leave? And like 2 people left, and everyone was like, yeah, whatever. So everybody's just like sitting in pouring rain, and he's like, all right, I guess I'm going to just keep doing this bird show. So he did the bird show, and that was Tato Park. That was pretty cool. Oh, highlight of Tato Park. They had a 4D theater, right? And, you know, it's like, you know, the seats, they move, and it sprays mist and water at you, right? And so we go, and it doesn't even say what film is showing in the 4D theater. It's just like, 4D theater, we have one. There you go, we got one. Just take it. So we went in there, and it was this like bootleg CGI cartoon, like very clear ripoff of Jurassic Park. It was called like Dino Park or something. And you're riding around a Jeep around Dino Park, and dinosaurs are chasing you, right? And it's very like it's very poor animation. It's like, I don't know, Nick Jr. CGI. And we're there, and we're kind of laughing because, like, the theater's not very nice. It's bare concrete walls, and, like, the teenage employee running it is just, like, in a folding chair in the corner of the theater with, like, their soda and their chips. And just like whatever. It's very, like, casual, just like, here, just sit in our seats and just watch the movie. But all the kids in the audience, which was mostly kids, were, like, screaming. Like...
Because you were scared of the dinosaurs?
Yeah. Like, and I realized, okay, for people who live in this area of Ireland, they've never seen anything like this before. Like, I'm thinking about rides I've been on, like the Spider-Man ride that we went on in Florida, you know, the Hogwarts ride, the Star Wars rides, right? These really crazy immersive environments. And here's this, like, 4D theater, and these kids are like, there are kids crying. There was a kid that was like, I don't think I like this. I don't think I like this. And Dave and I were, like, crying, laughing while watching this, because it's, like, the most, like, low-effort 4D theater experience that you could have.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it was pretty, yeah. So that was our last day on the trip to Tato Park.
Wait, so I mean, I guess I was kind of waiting for like a tie-in. Why is it a dinosaur thing? Like,
no reason.
I mean, so is this part? Are things potato themed, or that's just an excuse to have a theme park? Right?
It's just an excuse to have a theme park. Mr. Tato Man, who's the guy on the potato chip bag, is just like on the signage and on the maps, and there's statues of him and stuff, but
maybe there's like a larger extended universe of Mr. Tato. Like maybe he has a cartoon show where there's a dinosaur character.
No, and their big wooden roller coaster is themed to Vikings, and there's like a Viking log ride, which we didn't ride, but you know, got the gist of. And there's a zoo, and there's a kiddie land that's themed to fairies, but it's Tato Park.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Any rate, I think I need to stop talking about my Europe trip. It's been over an hour.
Well, I mean, I guess what are the places? Like, how did you get back to the States? Like, did you leave from whatever you said?
From Dublin.
From Dublin, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Dublin has a bus that takes you to Tato Park, and then when the park closes, there's buses that take you back to Dublin. So that's what we did.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, definitely. I have not been to Ireland, but definitely taking notes on places to visit. And I'm not sure if Mr. Tato Man Park or whatever is going to make the list, but yeah, like a lot of those other places I known about, like I definitely want to visit. So it's really cool that you got to go see those.
And I got to say that if I hadn't gone with Maeve's family, I wouldn't have seen half the stuff I did, because there's so many things that like that church ruin that we went to. You know, her dad's just like, yeah, like this is just a place that I know is there, and when I was a kid, me and my friends used to hang out here and play around and stuff, and it's just like there's no way to. Like, there's so many things that are just not tourist attractions, but they really are. Like, those were some of the best things that I saw on the trip.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the pros and cons of, you do the bus tours and they'll make sure you get to see all the famous things, but then it's just like, if you get to either travel around by yourself or with someone who's a local, they're going to show you all the the hidden gems.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. So there's a lot of variation on the trip. There was a lot of different types of experiences, big city stuff, touristy stuff, hidden stuff, ruins, ancient buildings. I think we went to Nando's a total of 5 or 6 times throughout the entire trip because they were in every country we went to. It was it was a trip of a lifetime. It was quite a thing.
Well, cool. That's awesome. So we'll go back to the past and revisit your experience with the Back to the Future musical.
Oh goodness, I forgot. We still have to talk about the thing that this episode's about. Jeez. Okay. All right. Great. I'll go ahead and do the summary. Spoilers for Back to the Future the musical. So Back to the Future the musical tells the story of Back to the Future the movie with slight changes and songs.
Yeah, I mean that I was gonna say, I don't know. Do we need a summary? I think just we
That's
can
the
maybe
summary.
Yeah, exactly. We'll explore the differences as we go. But yeah, for the most part, it's, if you know the Back to the Future, that is to say the first film, then you know the story of the musical. They stay pretty close. Like there's some more nuanced changes, I suppose. But yeah, like there's nothing was like, oh my gosh, Marty dies at the end. Whoa, like there's nothing like that. So
Right. Well, on that note, we're gonna split this review up into 4 pieces, and we're gonna talk about the story changes. Then we'll talk about the actual performances. Then we'll talk about the tech, and then we'll talk about it as an adaptation. So, like you said, the story of Back to the Future the musical mostly stays pretty close to the movie, but there were some changes. Do you want to go into that, or?
Well, so yeah, I mean, one of the things is I saw this in April, so it's been a good 3-4 months since I've seen it, so I don't remember all the details. The biggest changes I remembered were maybe like Marty's character being a little different, which just in order to serve the story in the way they wanted to tell it, and those kinds of things. I'm trying to remember the actual, like, if there's story beats that were major deviations. So you'll have to remind me on maybe some of those.
Well, I will say that the biggest one that I noticed in Act 1 is that in the night where they test the DeLorean, where Marty ends up going back, they do not get attacked by terrorists.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Do you remember what happened instead?
He gets radiation poisoning or something, right?
Right. So when he's putting the plutonium in the DeLorean, his radiation suit rips, and he ends up getting poisoned, and he's dying of radiation poisoning. And Marty is going to use the DeLorean to go, like, take him to the hospital or get help or something, and then that's why he ends up accidentally going back to the future. So, the whole idea of him stealing it from terrorists is completely scrubbed from the show, which, understandable.
Yeah, very understandable, and it was a little far-fetched I mean, it's a time travel movie, so it's far-fetched in the first place, but I always kind of felt that it was a little hokey, or just kind of like just a random thing in this otherwise like more homey story where there's like machine guns and terrorists like, randomly, like, oh, that's right, this is in this movie. Okay.
Right. And you think about it from that, for one thing, the movie came out in the 80s, pre 9/11, so terrorism was not as much on people's minds, but also one of the things going into the show is like there's a lot of action sequences and there's a lot of car chases in Back to the Future. How do you do a car chase on stage?
Right, and boy, do they.
They do, But I could definitely see them going, okay, you know what? The terrorism thing is not going to play, and if we eliminate it, we also eliminate a car chase.
True.
Right? They don't have to do the whole machine gun thing around the parking lot, which approaching that scene, I'm like, how are they going to... I had a feeling they were going to change that scene. I just didn't know how.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, okay, you know what? That works. It establishes Doc Brown as, kind of, as absent-minded, that he would, that he would tear his radiation suit and still handle plutonium. He's being very uncareful with it.
Right.
But I think that was probably the biggest change to the plot that I'm trying to think, like, I know that there were definitely parts that were streamlined. Everything before he goes back to the future is very condensed. Like, there are scenes there that are basically 1-to-1 from the movie. Like the Biff comes to the house and
and bullies his dad and the family, and one thing it's interesting with like a story like this where you're saying that they streamline certain portions of it, but they'll kind of do it in the form of a song, right?
Right.
So there's that song which I'm like, oh, do we really need a song about this? But like, no, that's a good way to establish the characters, express their emotions about where they are at that point in time, and then kind of kick it off in that way. So.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because, you say show don't tell, but, in a movie, if you're not having musical numbers, you do have to show these relationships through their actions. But if you break out into song, you can condense 5 or 10 minutes into 2 minutes.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you get a song and you get a musical number, you get choreography and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of that going on. Little corners cut here and there. There wasn't the like when he crashes into the barn after he goes back to the future, or after he goes to the past, so he goes to 1955, but he doesn't have the encounter with like the farmer who lives there who's breeding pine trees. They don't mention that. He doesn't have to go move his DeLorean somewhere else. It's that
exactly. Those kinds of little details in the movie are fine, but I think just in the musical, like let's get the thing moving. Let's get to the actual important story elements.
Right, so, and it's that's interesting because on some level, you have to assume that most of the people, if not everybody in the audience, has seen the movie.
Right.
Like, I guess some people won't have seen it, but, like, at a certain point, you have to go, all right, like, what needs to be here and what doesn't? And it's a mix of, like, story beats that are important and memorable things from the movie that have to be in there just because people will expect it to be there.
Exactly. Like if you're exactly the script writer, you'd say, well, this thing from the movie is not important to the plot at all, but it's a fan favorite thing. It's either a line or a thing that happens, like Doc Brown building the scale model thing, right? That's a pretty memorable part of the movie, even though he could have explained that whole thing with a sentence, right?
Right.
Or a couple, right? Or a song. But no, you got to put it in there. I'm thinking about like, okay, if you're going to make a Star Wars musical, well, you got to mention Luke getting his power converters from Tosche Station.
Yep.
Even though that doesn't belong.
It doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything, but you have to put it in because there'll be blood in the streets if you don't.
Right. And another big change I'm remembering, I'm also looking at the Wikipedia page to remind myself, but so one of the more memorable parts of the movie is, one of the most memorable parts of the movie is the montage of him skateboarding to school set to Power of Love, right?
Right.
Not in there. Totally skipped.
Sure.
And you're as a Back to the Future fan going, they have to have that song, right? But it goes from he's at home, okay, I gotta go, or he's at Doc's place, oh, I gotta get to school. There's some other musical number, right?
Yes.
And then, there's the scene with him and Jennifer outside the clock tower, that scene. He goes to school, and then he auditions for the school play, and he and his band sing, like, 4 bars of Power of Love very crappily, and then they go, yeah, you're no good. You didn't make it. You're too dang loud, right? And that's the end of it.
Right.
And you go, but they got to do that song, right?
Right.
So instead, they move it to the end of the show.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they establish in that scene, like, hey, Marty, like, if you do well at this dance, my uncle, he's a record producer or whatever, and he might be able to get you in the industry. So then the whole story of the show happens, and then when he comes back, you find out, the gag is that her uncle is Huey Lewis.
Right.
And so he sees them perform, and now that he's gone through his whole story and his character arc, he has more confidence.
Exactly.
Then at the end of the show, they get to close the show with a really awesome cover of Power of Love.
Yeah, and I think that's worth the sacrifice. I mean,
right.
I totally get your point of, like, him just skateboarding kind of just shows he's a cool guy, right?
Right.
He's a cool skateboarding guy set to this cool song. But doing it in the way they did, I thought was such a better payoff, and just that finale number was such a huge hit. It everyone was, I mean, in my audience was standing up and rocking out. And,
oh yeah, same.
Yeah, so
same. And you think about it like his character arc, right? One thing that always bugged me in the movie is when Strickland calls him a slacker. Like, is Marty a slack? Like, yeah, okay, he's late for school, but he doesn't give off that vibe.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and like, because he skateboards to school, he seems cool, and he seems like, yeah, okay, yeah, this is a cool average American kid. Like, yeah, all right, cool. But I guess he's not, though. But
well, I think that no, exactly, and I think that's something they actually changed for the better in the musical. It kind of in what I was talking about earlier, where they changed his character enough where I felt like he maybe knew what he wanted more out of life. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think in the movie he was just a little more of a drift. So it was like, okay, I guess he's a slacker just in the context of the principal, who's of course a very studious, uptight, whatever you want to say. So from his perspective, like, oh, Marty seems directionless or something. But I felt like in the musical, he wasn't like that, right? He had a little more, I want to say confidence, but I think they kind of restructured his character so he had a little more direction. So that way when he does have he has his arc, you kind of get something out of it at the end when he's like, okay, now I have the confidence to be in this band and
rock, yeah.
And rock out.
Exactly. Especially because he having to perform at his high school to literally save his own existence. Like, it's literally like life or death here, all right?
Right.
Make this dance happen or your parents won't get together and you'll never exist. Like that, the stakes are super, super high. It's like, it makes sense that after going through that situation, then he would actually be able to give a killer performance when he comes back to his time. Yeah. So it actually works really well.
Yeah, I think it really does, because I guess when I look at it back at the movie, it does sort of feel like Marty, he's the main character, but he, like, did he really grow? Did he have an arc? Did he, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, sure he did, that's fine, but I think the movie, or the musical really kind of put that on a pedestal and said, yeah, he is a main character, he is our protagonist, you care about what he's going through, and you're happy to see him win and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so. Movie Marty and play Marty, but movie Marty is really stupid. Throughout all three movies, he just never knows what's going on. And it's okay because like it's a sci-fi story and it's a comedy and like he kind of stumbles through everything. And if not for Doc, like he would not be able to accomplish a single thing in the entire trilogy of the films. He just like is always a few steps behind and never knows what's going on. Right? But it's all right. He stumbles through the story and it happens, but this really does feel like in the play that he has a little bit more agency and has to like, okay, it's time to man up and figure this stuff out and get it going,
No, for sure. And I think it's Michael J. Fox's performance, right, where he's the high pitch, like the little squealing when he's talking, like he's bewildered all the time.
All the time, yeah.
All the time. And so I missed that from this version of Marty. Mm-hmm. But overall, I think he's probably a better character because, like you said, he actually has some motivation or momentum and agenda, and he kind of knows what's going on a little bit more. So it helps kind of move things forward. And Yeah.
What I remember another big story change that I remember as in I just read it, but there's another action sequence that they cut out / change. Do you remember which one I'm talking about?
I was thinking about one they added.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Well, I was thinking there was the whole. It's done, I think, mostly in a musical number, but it's them kind of running around the locker rooms, like through the high school halls.
Yep.
And I really love that musical number because they're like jumping on top of the lockers, and then like it's spinning around or something, and then they're jumping down, and it was just a really acrobatic. Well, we should mention the whole stage. Well, I guess we're kind of getting into.
We'll get there, yeah.
But yeah, it's there's a lot of animation and movement with the whole thing, and they really. Anyway, that scene was an action scene, more or less.
But that scene replaced the scene from the movie where Biff and his friends chase him in the car, and he turns that boxcar into a skateboard and skateboards around.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So another car chase that they. They really went, okay, it's a stage, it's a finite space, like we gotta simplify this as much as possible, because the stuff that you can't cut, as in all the DeLorean time travel stuff, you can't cut that, right? You gotta do that. So they had to come up with another way of having a scene where he bests Biff and his gang and his mom falls for him. Like, they have to still have that happen. But I think the thing I hated most in the entire show is there's this clumsily set up gag during that sequence where, like, I think a custodian drops a bunch of like neon lighting tubes. Yeah. And then he picks one up and it turns into a lightsaber.
I kind of rolled my eyes. I remember that really well.
I audibly booed.
It just felt like it was like, why? It has
must we bring Star Wars into everything?
Yeah, it just didn't. I mean, the effect was cool, I guess. But don't they even like quote lines from the movie like needlessly?
I think so.
I remember now. Yeah, it's like
he stands up on the locker and he picks up the neon. By the way, I don't think those tubes existed in 1955. But regardless, he picks it up, lights up, shouldn't light up because it's not plugged into anything.
Right.
It makes the lightsaber sound. And it's just so that, like, people can go, hey, Star Wars, yay, Star Wars. And, like, one of the scenes they cut, which is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, is Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan.
Oh, yeah.
There's, like, because there's a bit in the middle act of the movie where Marty's trying to coach his dad so that he can ask out Lorraine. And there's a couple days that exist there, and they really trims down the fat in that area. So like there's the scene where he's like, you gotta ask Lorraine to the dance, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna do it. And then he dresses up as Darth Vader from planet Vulcan and makes him listen to Metallica, and then he's like, okay, I'll do it. So in the show, he just doesn't protest. He's like, yeah, okay, all right, I'll go along with this. But we didn't get Darth Vader from planet Vulcan, But I guess, like, they still felt the need to have a Star Wars thing. It had to be, like, I'm so tired of lightsabers. Don't put it in Back to the Future.
I think what it is, well, it's funny because you said, like, the lightsaber turns on and the audience goes, yay.
Yeah.
I think it's just, like, lightsabers drop everyone's IQ by, like, 50 points. So they're just like, oh, bright lights, I like this. But, well, on that note, just in terms of the story or a little bit of back and forth between Marty and his father, trying to convince him to ask out Lorraine, the movie is pretty bad, I guess. But man, the play I think really accentuated how pervy and horrible George McFly is. Like, it's like, oh, you can't do that. Like, you just can't do that.
About him in the tree.
Yeah, he's literally in a tree with binoculars, staring at Lorraine, changing her clothes. It's like, you can't. What? This is not okay. We're supposed to be rooting for George McFly. Now he's a despicable pervert. Like,
well, yeah, it happens so quickly in the movie, and it's like, ew, gross. He's peeping Tom, but it's kind of played as a gag in the movie, and then it's like, all right, let's move on. Whatever. Fine. Exactly. You validation. Let's move on, and they have to make an entire song about it.
Right. It's like, don't dwell on this. It was...
I'm uncomfortable already. Please don't make the scene 5 times longer than it was
Exactly,
in the movie.
yeah.
I don't need that, please.
Yeah, that was egregious. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think story-wise, but yeah, I think overall, I think they you know, and we can kind of transition into the performances and the music itself.
Yeah.
But I think they, for the most part, knew when to have musical numbers and use them well, like how to, you know, condense time to, you know, flesh out characters. You know, I think that they did it with a subtle enough hand to where it worked, barring some things that I didn't love, but I think for the most part it did. Oh, and also, you know, we talked about how Power of Love got moved. It's the finale to the show now. But then also they do the curtain call, and then the encore is Back in Time, another Huey Lewis song, before everybody leaves. So, which is the song over the credits for the movie. So basically the end of the show just turns into a Huey Lewis cover band concert. But another thing I noticed is that, like, all of the songs from the movie that are in the play are in Act 2, because they do, you know, first part of Act 2 has some original songs, but then they do Earth Angel at the dance, they do Johnny Be Good.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
They do the DeLorean sequence, and then they do Power of Love, and then they do Back in Time. So basically all the last chunk of music of the show is all from the movie. So yeah, it ends on a good note. You know, it reminds me of, you know, when they did Shrek the Musical on Broadway, during previews, people gave the show negative reviews, and then they decided to add Smash Mouth's I'm a Believer to the end of the show, and then it started testing positively.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, you know, if I was planning out how I would do the musical numbers, and I would, if I, you know, I'm going to introduce new music, I would put those in the beginning and the middle, and then, you know, some people will like them, some people will be, you know, lukewarm on them or whatever. But if you end it with what they're familiar with, they know they like, then they're gonna remember it more positively, which I don't know, speaks more to the stupidity of human brains, but it's also good, you know, just good structuring in terms of just for the musical numbers in the play.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple things. It's always leave them wanting more, and, you know, always end on a good note. You know, and that buys you a lot of goodwill for any performance of anything if you know, you end on a good note and you leave them wanting more. Like, and I think they knew that. And if we can transition now into music and performances, I will say that the original music, I was left lukewarm about most of it.
Yeah, there were some I liked, but overall, I would say maybe 50-50. Like, maybe I can point out somewhat. There's that song that the Doc does. I want to say it's maybe middle to maybe beginning of the second act, or somewhere around there.
The Act 2 beginning, he has the dream sequence, which is it's always a weird way to start an Act 2. Mamma Mia does that.
Oh, does it? Yeah, it was just it was weird because, like, what are we even doing right now? And then 2, it was kind of like he's just talking about technology or something.
Right.
Like, what is this even doing here?
I did actually like that sequence a lot.
Oh, did you?
Just because the aesthetic of it was so different than the rest of the show.
True.
And I was kind of just like, what the heck is going on right now?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, okay, it's a dream. Whatever. Anyway, back to the show. I did find that funny.
It felt like a little bit of just a time filler, because I mean, I like Doc's character, and like, okay, how can we give him more character and more screen time and just have him do stuff? All right, well, let's give him another number.
Well,
it doesn't have to mean anything.
How I read it is that where they were in the story, you know, because it's written as a movie, it's not written as a 2-act play. It picks up with them in Doc's lab planning the time travel sequence, right? That's not a really super exciting way to start Act 2 of a musical. Act 2 of a musical needs to win the audience back after intermission, right? And typically, with a big comedy musical, you need to have a big musical number. You need to have a big, loud, dancey dance extravaganza musical number to win the audience back, right?
That's yeah.
And so, like, I could totally see them looking at it going, like, what? There's not a lot going on here. Like I could see them going, do we make a musical number about them with the model and no, that's not going to work. Like, what do we do here? And I'm sure somebody was just like, screw it, dream sequence, whatever. He wakes up and then he's like, oh, right, Marty, we have work to do. Like, that's what happens.
And now, is this the introduction of the, what is it, like all the dancing characters, and he's like, they almost break the fourth wall where he's aware of the dancing characters, but right? Don't they do something like that?
Yeah.
Like,
So I'm reading. I'll read the first line of the Wikipedia of Act 2. It says, Doc Brown dreams of the social, technological, economic, and political advances of the future, and the song is called 21st Century. And then he wakes up and Lorraine invites Marty to the school dance. Right? It's that scene. Where Lorraine comes by and asks Marty, and Doc's like, oh, you're in trouble, you shouldn't, and whatever, you know. It's like, yeah, you can't, like, I guess they could have had a song about her asking him, and he's awkward, but it's like, there's enough of that in the story. There's enough musical numbers of, my mom's into me, this is weird. Like, there's already enough of that. So, yeah, I get, you know, it's maybe not the most, it's maybe a bit of a lazy way to have a big showstopper at the beginning of Act 2, but it worked just fine for me because I liked the actual content of the song and the choreography and the goofy costumes and stuff like that.
No, I get you.
But in general, with the original music, pretty much every song worked in the moment. But can you think of how a single one of those songs goes in your head right now?
No, I mean, again, it's been a little bit longer for me, but
I couldn't as soon as I walked out of the theater.
Yeah.
That's
none of them were super catchy or anything.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the most comparable show I've seen to this recently, you know, as far as scale, pop culture-y stuff, is Beetlejuice. And Beetlejuice has very defining things from the movie that they incorporated into the show as well. But I was humming the tunes, the original songs of Beetlejuice after the show. Like, it stuck with me for a while, like, because the music was strong. And I think the music in the show, the original music that is serviceable. It's fine.
Yeah.
It does its job. It gives way for fun choreography and, you know, action scenes and whatnot. But I wouldn't just put this soundtrack on just to listen to.
Yeah, I probably should have done a little homework and played the soundtrack for myself.
Well, that's the thing is that I deliberately. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna agree with you that none of the songs I remember, like. I mean, partly is like you were saying, it leaves the show with Power of Love, and that's kind of what's stuck in your head afterwards.
It's all the songs that you already love because you love the movie.
Right.
Are the last 4 songs of the show. So it's like, and because it's the last 4, there's not a chance that you're going to remember any of the original music, and I think that's kind of sad.
Yeah, it is. But you know, you were saying you like, the performances in the musicals and just the acrobatics and just all that was very memorable. Like I can vividly remember the musical, the first musical number where it's just them in their house, which is like, that's the most boring thing you could ever do, but they made it memorable. Like there is interplay between the characters, and again, I can't even think of how the tune goes at all, but I know they did a reprise of it at some other point as well. And I already mentioned the number where they're dancing all around the lockers. We talked about that one. The choreography, the movement of the actors on the stage itself, I loved all that. All very memorable.
Now I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the set list. I remember that in the diner scene, when Marty first arrives in 1955, there's Goldie Wilson gets a song about how he's gonna improve the future and become the mayor.
Gosh,
yeah, dude. I remember loving that song in the moment, but I'd forgotten about it entirely until I just looked up the set list.
Yeah, I think there's a couple songs where I remember thinking like, oh wow, this character is getting a whole musical number. Like even when the couple songs that Doc had, I was like, he has like 3, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's about somewhere around there.
Yeah, I mean, I did like that mostly because I enjoyed the Doc's performance. Like, I mean, obviously everyone loves Doc Brown. He's crazy,
Right.
and then they kept that running joke where he's sort of breaking the fourth wall the whole time. But it's only during those those musical numbers, so it's not like really breaking the fourth wall, because it is musical numbers in essence are already sort of
Right.
themselves breaking the fourth wall. Like,
They
what's
are
going on here?
they are non-diegetic.
They are non-diegetic.
Which,
So yeah, I liked everything I was maybe looking at, but maybe not everything I was hearing. I don't know. That's another way to say it. But yeah, I wouldn't say the music was necessarily bad. Like, I don't remember thinking like, this needs to stop.
I liked it all. You know, and I've gone to shows where I'm like, all right, cut this song. You know, this one's good. Cut this.
Yeah.
But no, there was not a moment where I was like, this one's not working. They all worked, but none of them stood out. There was not a single musical number after the show was over where I was like, oh man, I gotta go put that on Spotify. I gotta listen to that again. It was serviceable. It was fine.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But all the performers are great. You mentioned Doc. In our performances, well, assuming you didn't have any understudies, Doc was played by Roger Bart. He's a minor Hollywood celebrity, and he's a big Broadway celebrity. Probably his biggest claim to fame is the producers. He was several characters in the Broadway run of the producers. In the movie producers, he was one of the... He was in the Keep It Gay scene. He was one of the directors. But he's also been in a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, I remember I went in not knowing really anything, but of course I got the program and the playbill, and I was reading. I was like, and then I, of course I saw his face, and I was like, oh wait, I know who this guy is. And at the time, I couldn't remember where I knew him from. But then I of course Googled it, and I was like, oh okay, I know him from all these things. Marty, I didn't know him. I don't know that I've seen him in anything. I mean, not that I'm like necessarily a big Broadway guy or anything like that, but I thought he was good too. Again, I think there was enough changes to Marty's character, and leaving out, Michael J. Fox's particular lilt that he has. He wasn't quite the same Marty, but I still thought he was good.
Yeah, but I think he worked great. It wasn't quite the same, but he made the role his own. And it still very much worked for what this version of Back to the Future.
Yeah.
In a past podcast episode, right after you came back from Europe and you were recommending the show, which is the reason we went to go see it, by the way. We took your recommendation. You mentioned the actor who played George McFly stealing the show, and oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah. I was just going to mention that. I mean, we can't not mention it, of course.
Yeah, he's got the mannerisms down, the goofy laugh, the physical comedy. Probably maybe even better than from the movie.
Than Crispin Glover? Yeah. Which is, because Crispin Glover just, he invented that role, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where he was pulling from, but I don't know that I can, draw any lines. And this guy, I don't know who played him in the play, but oh my gosh. Because they knew that he was going to be a crowd favorite. Like, everything he did on stage, the audience was going crazy. At least in my show.
Yeah, same.
It just, I would not have known it or expected it going in that he was going to be such an audience favorite. But he stole the show.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, everything with him was funny. I think the cast was really strong.
Yeah, I agree.
Just overall, Biff was good. He did everything that he needed to do. Everybody. They were true to the spirit of the characters, but they also made the roles their own in some way, and it worked really well. Do you have anything else on this topic?
No, I was just gonna say I'm kind of anxious to get talking about the tech. Right, that's next.
Oh my God, the tech. Where to start?
Well,
okay.
you should start by saying, I guess, if any frequent listeners will know, Matt is himself a stage tech. You are a teacher of stage tech.
Yes.
So you're the most harsh critic we could have on the cast at this moment. So what did you? I'm very.
I have zero criticisms.
Wow.
No. But I've been telling people, this show used every trick in the book and invented a bunch of new ones.
Yeah, so I completely agree. Of course, my say-so doesn't mean as much, but I was wowed.
So, I teach when I work in theater, I'm a lighting guy, specifically a lighting electrician, technician, what have you. But I teach a high school stage tech class, and I'm the technical director for that theater, so I have to know, some of everything. And so for one thing, let's talk about the stage. You mentioned like the turntable for one thing. So the stage has a turntable embedded in it, which serves a lot of different purposes. When they roll the DeLorean out, it's on this turntable, so it's able to create the illusion of motion by, its wheels spin, it sits in place, but it can rotate 360 degrees on a horizontal axis, so it can, when it needs to drive using projections, it can turn sideways and create the illusion of movement. That's cool, but turntables are also useful for a lot of other things, like the locker room scene, the high school scene, the chase, right? If you put a wall on a turntable, right, you all of a sudden have a rotating set where you can have something downstage facing the audience going on, and while that's happening, upstage of the wall on the turntable, you can have a set change. So you'll have stage hands setting up something behind it, and then the turntable just has to spin 180, and now there's a new setup. Right?
Completely seamless, and the audience didn't even of course they're focused on the action in front.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening too fast for you to really realize what's going on unless you're studied up on it, which I am. So I'm going I'm involved in the story and the action of the plot, and I'm also going, not only are they setting up things continually, they're going through this entire high school, right? The cafeteria, the locker room, the hallways. So they have to rapidly, in a finite space, create different locations within this high school building, right? And at the same time, they're using this wall that they're using to partition off the two areas of the stage. Marty's climbing on top of it because there's lockers, so they're also using it as a physical thing to stand on top of. Basically, when I talk about turntables in my class, I talk about all the different ways that you can use a turntable and the different uses they have. I've never seen a show where they used all of them, and often in the same scene. Yeah. And so that was impressive, right?
I knew. Upon watching that, I was like, "Oh, Matt's gonna. If he ever gets to see this play, he's going to love this."
Oh yeah.
But that I think might be shadowed by the DeLorean itself.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and we got to talk about that because, and many know, I'm a projections guy. I love projections. You back in the day saw my college capstone show. Yep. And I'm sure you remember how projection heavy it was, but I love stage projections. Now I will say, if I have a minor criticism of this show, I never thought I would say this, but it's maybe verging on just a little too much projections. But at the same time, I'm sitting there, waiting for the show to start, going, how are they going to... I'm running through the movie in my head, going, how are they going to do some of these sequences? And I'm making predictions I think they'll cut this scene. For this scene, I think they might do this. For this scene, I think they might do this. And I was right for maybe 2/3 of my guesses. But yeah, so a good example of this is that, okay, so I'm going to get into teacher mode here a little bit. You've been on the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland.
Of course.
Yes. And you know that during the scene where it's getting longer, the stretching room.
Indeed.
So the lights go out, and you're in this room, and it's stretching, and you can see the ceiling, right? And the lights go out, and then the ceiling kind of disappears, and you see that the room is actually taller. The ghost host says, "There's always my way out." And it reveals that there's a hanging dummy, there's a hanging skeleton, and the implication is that the ghost host tried to hang himself to get out of the house. And then the lights come back on, and the ceiling is back, right? So that effect is done using what's called a scrim. It's a specific type of theatrical fabric that is light reactive. So if you shine light at the scrim and you're on the same side as the light source, it appears opaque. if you shine light from the opposite side, it appears transparent. And that transparency varies depending on how much light is going through the fabric, right? So when the lights go out where you're standing, but then the lightning flashes above the scrim, it's lighting it from behind, and that's what makes the scrim disappear, right? So that's a theater trick. That's a trick that's used on stage, and there was extensive uses of scrims in this show, but in a way that I hadn't quite seen, where so they'll have this curtain, this scrim that'll come down and it'll close off the whole stage, right? But you can still see through it. You can see the action on stage. You can see the actors through it. But it also provides a projection surface. So you can project live video onto the surface, and it all of a sudden becomes a solid video surface. But if you have any light from behind, that part of the screen is transparent, and you can see what's going on behind it. So there was a fun little gag in Act 2 where they're setting up the clock tower action sequence, where Doc Brown climbs the clock tower. And he's climbing up the stairs to the clock tower, but he's just standing there on the stage, mimicking, just stepping in place, and the projection is showing stairs animated as if he's climbing up these staircases. And it
was so impressive.
Yeah, but it's also really goofy. Did it get a laugh when you saw it?
I don't remember if it did or not.
Okay, it got laughs when I saw it. Because it's like, it's kind of the show showing its hand, right? It's saying, all right, here's how this works, right? We have this screen. You can see behind it, but we're projecting onto it, so you can see Doc behind the screen, and it shows him climbing the clock tower, right? And it kind of telegraphs to the audience, look, this is how we're going to do the finale, right? Because during the finale, it's intercut with projections on that screen of the car driving, but then there's that moving set piece, the clock tower bit, where Doc is standing on top of it, and it's a real set, and it moves across the stage, and it has light shining on it so you can see him, and that part of the scrim becomes transparent. And they do that a lot throughout the show.
Yeah.
Do you kind of picture what I'm talking about? Like,
no, I mean, I can. I don't know if the audience can.
Yeah, I don't know either. But the thing is, I've seen tricks like this before, but I've never seen entire sequences that rely on it.
Yeah, the amount of coordination and just absolute perfection of just synchronization was insane. Because, the Doc Brown is moving against things that some of which is there, right? Some of which is actual physical props, but then the entire setting and a lot of other, more near to him settings are completely fabricated, right? They're completely not there.
Right. So, like, for example, he's on a platform behind the scrim that is, it's painted black or whatever, and the top part of it has the little top of the clock tower, right?
Yeah.
And it shows him in front of the clock, and then in front of the scrim, they're projecting the rest of the tower below it to cover up the scaffold that he's standing on.
Yeah.
Right? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. So when you have the sequence where in a movie, you can cut back and forth between the action because it's a movie, and you have camera cuts, like, how do you go from Doc is on a tower trying to plug in a cable to Marty's driving a car, back to Doc, back to Marty in rapid succession? Because you have to keep the pacing of the scene, right?
Right.
And I've always said that as far as like tension building goes, I think the climax of the movie Back to the Future is one of the best tension building scenes in all of Hollywood, like in all of film history.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure.
Like don't you when you watch it kind of still get nervous that they're not going to make it?
Yeah, and that's how you know a movie is good or is timeless and fantastic. A movie that's 35 years old or whatever, it can still make you think the outcome will be different.
Right. You sit there and you go, come on. And then it gets unplugged because the tree branch lands on it and you go, come on, right? Another good scene like that is in Titanic, where it's going to hit the iceberg and you're kind of watching it going, come on, just turn the ship a little bit. Don't hit the iceberg. And then like in the Plinkett review, then you feel like an idiot because you know it's going to hit the iceberg.
Yeah, no, and I can think of any number of movies, especially ones that have like maybe certain like tragic moments where you love the movie so much and you know there's this moment of tragedy that is a big turn. every time you watch it, you're like, this time, no, don't make this decision, or don't let this happen, or but that's why we keep coming back, partly.
But
yeah,
when those scenes are effective, a lot of times it's effective because of editing and pacing,
right,
and the camera work, like showing you the right things at the right times, right? And that's what I found impressive most about the show, is that, like, how do you do that without cameras and cutting to different footage? It's in the same space the entire time.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I was kind of skeptical going into the show, going, there's no way they're going to be able to pull off some of these scenes adequately. Like, how could you possibly do it? And like you said, the amount of coordination, right? Like, you need to make sure that the projections go off at the right time. You need to make sure that the moving physical props and set pieces are in the right spots at the right time. You need to make sure that the lighting fixtures are hitting those in the right place and time. And everything has to line up perfectly, or nothing works. It all falls apart.
It completely dispels the illusion.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, so I mentioned the Spider-Man ride at Universal already.
I was thinking about that, but I was like, that's too much to explain right now.
I mean, like, okay, so you're going through this ride, and there's physical props, but every once in a while there's a screen, and it's supposed to be like you're looking down a New York street, but you're in a moving car. So what they had to do is they had to animate the perspective of that New York street to shift to match the movement of the car, right? It reminds me of that, right? Because it's like everything has to. And remember when we went on it and it broke in the middle of the ride, and all the projections were off, and like we were like, I don't even know how to describe it. We were like flying sideways. Like, we were like, where are we? What direction are we facing? Right?
Yeah, like I wish I had a good analogy to properly explain the mental destruction that was happening to me.
Right.
It's just like the entire world is collapsing in on itself.
Right. It's like it's like in Doctor Strange when the cities are folding in on each other. Yeah, that's what that ride
closest.
through the that ride through the Spider-Man ride was like that, happening in real time, which was also cool because it broke, they let us ride through it again. But yeah, like I could imagine, like, if, like, I shudder to think what a performance of this musical looks like when things go wrong.
Yeah, that whole finale would just be, it wouldn't even work. It would.
Right. I mean, there's shows that have complex special effects that if the special effect doesn't work, there's a way through it, right? I've seen the Lion King musical a bunch of times, and there was a performance, at the end, Simba throws Scar off the cliff, right? And it's wire work. Scar's on wires, and he flies off the cliff in slow motion, and there's a strobe light, and, Anyway, there was one performance I saw where he couldn't get his harness on time, so they just faded to black, and over the black they had the sound of him screaming. Right? Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's
kind of disappointing that the special effect didn't work, but I have a saying, which is, if the audience doesn't know it's a mistake, then it's not a mistake. Right? I'd seen it before, so I knew it was, but okay, they got through that pretty well. But Back to the Future, I don't know how. There's some sequences in the show where I don't know how they would recover if something goes wrong.
Yeah, but I mean, luckily enough, my show went off without a hitch. So I don't know if there are instances of their performances that things go awry, but in any case, mine it showed off both the best that stage performances have to offer in terms of stage tech, as well as inventing a bunch of new stuff that I'd never seen before.
Yep. I have to talk about the lighting in the house where the audience is. They had this, like, it looked like the time circuits that were kind of coming out of the stage and onto the walls of the audience. And those changed colors and they animated throughout the show. But it was such a great thing to walk into when you enter the theater. It just smacks you in the face with Back to the Future as soon as you walk in the room.
Yeah, and there's like a big clock on the screen or something, right? And counting down, and
right.
they're getting you pumped up for it. So,
but we have to talk about probably the most impressive special effect, and this is minor spoilers, but if you really don't want to know, then fast forward a few minutes. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The big finale is, well, not even the finale, the post finale.
It's in the middle of, it's towards the end of Power of Love, and then so in the middle of their concert, Doc shows up in the DeLorean. It crashes the concert.
Of course, right?
Right. And which is another example of them condensing the ending, right? It's not. It doesn't happen in their front yard. And then he says, "Marty, you got to come with me to the future." And he gets in the DeLorean, and then DeLorean rises up into the air, right? And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's cool." Where we're going, we don't need roads, right?
Of course.
And then it starts flying forwards towards the audience. And I'm like, okay. Cool. I'm expecting the lights to go out any second now.
Right.
And then it keeps going.
And
then it flies out over the audience. And then it flips over.
Yeah, it is at this point they're just like bragging. Like there's no reason the car needed to flip over.
No.
But they do it just because they're like, if you think you figured this out, you don't have this figured out. We're flipping the car.
Right. I mean, I was expecting, a hydraulic platform under the car to raise it maybe 10 feet. That would be impressive enough. Right? And then it goes dark and you see the car take off in projections. I would have been fine with that.
Yeah, that's...
But yeah, you're right. At that point, or a prop or something else, it goes off stage, and then some prop flies around the house, whatever. But they literally shoved 2 actors in this full-size DeLorean and flew it out over the orchestra section of the audience and flipped it upside down. That is, as you put, it's just bragging at that point.
Yeah, it was just like because the way it goes. It's like it gives the audience enough time to think about it. Like, whoa, this is impressive.
Yeah.
Whoa, this is impressive. Oh, wait, hold on now. What is going on? Like, they can't keep this going.
Right. That is. Now, on the note of things going wrong, when they get into the car, when I saw it, there was a long pause from between when they get into the car and then when the car started rising up in the air. And the little musical, there was like 4 bars of music that the orchestra just kept repeating over and over again. And I kind of turned to Maeve and I'm like, uh-oh, something's going wrong. And then right after I said that, the car started lifting up. And I'm like, oh, okay. After it was over, I'm like, I bet they probably, like, the actors needed extra time to get into their safety mechanism or whatever. That's usually what it is. A lot of technical problems are because... like there's an assistant stage manager backstage, and whenever stunts have to happen, the stage manager in the booth has to get an okay. They have to get a clear from that person that all the safety procedures have been followed. If they don't get a 100% clear, then they don't do it. They go to their backup plan. Yeah. I was like, oh man, whatever's gonna happen is gonna be cool, and it might not happen. For a second there, I was like, I had a feeling that was going on, but luckily, whatever it was that was going on, they figured it out, and it happened. You didn't mention it, so I'm guessing that didn't happen with you. But
no, it was, I didn't even know that could happen. Like, I mean, obviously I know there's safety procedures because I did think about to myself, like, wait a minute, did they trick me? Did they exit the DeLorean without me noticing? Do they pull a magic trick on me? They're still in the car.
Right. They're over the audience and they're waving at people. Yeah. You know? Like, God, I don't know what to say. Like, honestly, it was one of the most bonkers things I've seen in a theater, in a live performance.
Yeah, it was very impressive. Like, it was just a fantastic way to kind of like end the actual play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just the DeLorean crashing into the musical scene was already pretty impressive, because again, the DeLorean is a character sort of in its own right throughout the play, where it is moving on stage, and it really does feel like it's alive and moving in a way that a car shouldn't be able to move on a play stage. So the fact that now it's up and alive and flying is also
Yes.
kind of a cool little thing for the DeLorean itself, right?
The way that the DeLorean drives around and on stage, if you actually if you were to turn on all the work lights in that theater and see the effects with everything else that's hiding without that stuff, you would see that the range of motion it has is very, very limited. But they are masters at hiding that and making it feel like it is it has a full range of motion. It's very impressive.
No, for sure. I mean, they're masters of illusion for sure. Because you're right. When the car is there's a chase and there is kind of driving around. If you're looking and you kind of know enough about projection and junk like that, you can kind of see. Okay, I see how they're doing this. Then if you just take a step back and kind of just look at the whole scene, you're like, this is convincing me. This is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, would you say to kind of wrap this up?
Yeah.
Since we're past the 2-hour mark, it's a very popular thing in the musical world nowadays to take popular movies and adapt them, and some cases they work, in some cases not so much. Would you say that going from film to stage, that this was a successful adaptation, given what you know about film and about theater?
I think it was. I mean, I think there's enough kind of music in the blood of Back to the Future, so to speak, that it was sort of maybe not natural, but it's logical, if nothing else. I thought it made sense for them to try it, especially again with what you're saying about this kind of being a trend. So I was like, I think this one worked. I don't know, so I haven't seen Beetlejuice, so I'm trying to compare it. But if thinking about all the the Disney movies that transitioned, those are more natural again because they're already musicals, blah blah blah. But anyway, to answer your question, I thought it worked.
Yeah, you're talking about the Disney ones. My first week of school, I do a week-long project about Frozen the musical, both because it's a good study in stage tech and how to adapt something from film to stage, because I asked the class, what's Frozen about, what's the story about, we map it out, and then I say, what do you think is the hardest thing to do, what's the biggest challenge of taking this story and putting it on stage? And the answer is magic, right? Magic doesn't exist, but you need to convince the audience that it does, right? You can't do Frozen without a character who does magic ice powers, right? And Back to the Future, I feel like is that, but much harder of a challenge, right? So I think in that regard, it's they more than met the challenge. They really blew my expectations away. Other aspects of the show, you're mentioning, their music is in the blood of the movie. I think that if you didn't have any of the music from the movie, I would not speak as favorable as towards the show as I am. I think that the original music was leaving something to desire. So if we're talking about the medium of it being a musical, right, I'm saying it's a really good thing that they were able to get all those songs.
Oh,
right, because
if the rights to them,
if they hadn't, then I don't think the show would have worked quite as well. I kind of wonder, it'd be worth reading up on to see if they were okay, if it's a no-go if we can't get these songs, right. You know what I mean? Early on in the process, super early. So I mentioned Beetlejuice early. Beetlejuice has Deo, and it has the other Belafonte song at the end, right? Which are both in the movie. Right. But if those were not in the musical, the stage show, I wouldn't miss them. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'd be fine without it. I would say that the show is strong enough to where it can be its own thing, inspired by the movie, and I'd be okay. But I do not feel that way about Back to the Future. But luckily, most of Act 2 is the music. And does that mean that it relies heavily on nostalgia? Absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, that's what the whole thing is. Right, and that's the thing. And I can't objectively, I can't give a fair assessment of this show because I've been watching Back to the Future since I was 4 years old, in perpetuity. I've always just seen Back to the Future, and I struggle to find a person who hasn't. And that's the thing, is that do you give it a pass knowing that Back to the Future is one of the biggest pop cultural things in all of Thingdom, right?
Right. I mean, you're right. It would be interesting to talk to someone who has never seen the Back to the Futures, or maybe only vaguely aware of its existence, and see what they think.
Right.
I think they would still be impressed. I think they would still really like it.
I think so too.
I think that more than we don't think the music was necessarily super rememberable. I think what we agreed it was serviceable, and I enjoyed the musical numbers. So I think anyone could enjoy this.
Yeah. I think the basic story outline of Back to the Future is strong. Just the quick pitch. Kid goes back, he disrupts his parents' meeting, he's got to fix it, right? That is a strong concept, and I think that works on its own. And I think... Yeah, go ahead.
No, exactly. It does work on its own, and kind of dovetailing that with just... Okay, we are nostalgic, potentially, for this movie from the 80s in our childhood.
Right.
But the movie, and the story itself is built on nostalgia, in the sense that... like just Americana. It's going back to the past to visit your parents' time.
Right.
And that's something that maybe not any human, but most Americans anyway, we have talked to our parents. We grew up with our parents, and they've told us about their past. Maybe they've shown us movies from their past, shown us pictures from their past. And so in that respect, Marty is doing that, but he gets to do it in real. He gets to actually visit those times and live in those times. So in that sense, the movie itself is building and capitalizing on that sense of nostalgia. So for us to have this experience with this play and experience it in another way, and again in a more quote-unquote real lived-in way than, say, a movie where we're just watching it, that's a little bit of a leap, but you see where I'm coming from.
No, I know exactly where you're coming from.
I think it's a good adaptation in that sense, because it gets us there.
If we go further, and it's great because this all ties into the theme of time, right? Back to the Future came out in 85. When you and I were youngins, it didn't feel like that was like, that didn't feel like it was in the past. Like, that just happened. Like, I remember the tail end of the 80s. I was born in 86. My earliest memories are from the American 80s, right? So now, we being old enough, like, neither of us have kids, but like people who are old enough to have careers and to be able to afford Broadway tickets, right, are now old enough to have kids. And so younger people who are coming to see this show, it's that 30-year nostalgia cycle. We're at the tail end of it. You know, a few years back, like, everything was 80s, you know, Stranger Things and everything was 80s, right? Like, so it's... And high school kids, and I know because I'm around them all the time, they love 80s music and they love 80s stuff.
Oh,
right?
For sure, yeah.
And so for them, it's like, oh, like they really play up the 80s-ness in the show, whereas the movie, like, oh, it was made in the 80s, like that's just how things were. But when you go back and you watch the movie, it does feel very 80s. Like, it does feel like someone tried to make this look like the 80s. But that's just how it is, right? So it works on that level too.
No, I completely agree. And well, one thing too is that you're talking about when 80s are hot right now. Well, 80s were even hotter maybe 3 or 4 years ago when this was supposed to have come out in the first place.
Right.
Whenever it was, but the pandemic interrupted it and got
it was also in development hell for a while.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Because I think the original plan was to have it released on the date when Marty goes into the future.
Yeah, 2015. It's been in development since before then. But yeah, it stalled out and it lost creative teams and whatever. But anyway, that's not important. It's it's time for Back to the Future to be nostalgic in itself.
Right. Which exactly. And that's it's almost like a meta thing where it's, we're nostalgic about it when it itself is a movie that is nostalgic about the 50s.
Right. So to go back to my question of, like, do we give it a pass for it relying heavily on nostalgia? We're like, yeah, okay, if you think about the medium of musical theater, right, you have choreography, you have singing, you have technology, you have, all this stuff, and it excels in in almost all of those things, and in some of those areas, it, like, especially the tech, it's far and beyond a lot of other things that I've seen. So yeah, these are all things that you have in your toolbox to make a stage musical. Like, I think it's okay if everything else is super, super strong, if one area is kind of a little bit weaker. Like, it still gets an A. You know?
No, for sure.
If every other area is getting extra credit, then yeah, it's okay if the actual music, the original music, is a B minus. You know, like that.
Sure.
I would say it's about a B minus. You know.
Right.
But yeah,
No,
yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this does on Broadway, and to see if it speaks to younger people, and to see, you know, if it really catches on. I hope it does.
I hope it does too, and that actually brings me to kind of one thing I wanted to say is it is interesting, right, to see this very, very, very American IP.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an American movie that is nostalgic about the American 50s.
Right.
Right, which it's like its own identity in that sense.
Right.
And to see this play doing very well in London.
Right.
And so I mean, I assume my audience was entirely British folk. That they had such a strong response and love for this thing that, you know, I mean, Hollywood, everyone loves Hollywood, sure, across the world. But you know what I mean? That a play would have, you know, sold out shows, you know, all the time like this. It's a very interesting thing. I would be surprised, baffled even, that if, you know, that this would not do well in America.
Right. Oh yeah. I think it has the potential to be huge, and I hope it does. I think if there's anything that's potentially going to get in the way of that, it's the budget. A show like this is very expensive, and that's what almost killed Beetlejuice, because Beetlejuice was slow going out of the gate, and then they executed a technicality in their contract to end it early, and then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden it was like it had been growing this fan base on like TikTok and Instagram of you know, people in their teens and early 20s, and then all of a sudden it was gone. And that created such an uproar that they were able to bring it back after the pandemic. So I'm hoping, but that budget is what did it. It's like if a show like this doesn't sell so many tickets per night, then they're not making a profit off of it.
Right.
And I could get into the details of why, but I'm not going to. And that's the thing that I think, if anything's going to stop it, it's that a show like this is expensive. It's very expensive. So
Gotcha.
Hopefully people take to it, and they take to it fast, because I would love to see this go on tour. I would definitely go see it again if it came to San Diego.
Oh, 100%.
I don't know how they would do a touring version of this.
Yeah.
But I would go see it just to see, like, that would be its own experience of like, what did they have to change to be able to take this on the road? That's, you know, that in itself is interesting. But
well, I mean, so that the audience, if you're listening and you're interested, you gotta go to London.
yeah.
You better not wait. You gotta see this DeLorean flying around.
Well, the Broadway one, I'm confident, will be the full experience.
But they won't get to see it with Londoners.
Well, you know, I guess so. Right.
And we didn't even mention that the whole time they're talking in British accents. It's really distracting. I don't know.
Yeah,
why
that
they
was
made
pretty
choice.
distracting. They're not really doing that. All right.
Well, yeah. So you heard it from us, from the YumChunkers. Go see the Back to the Future musical.
If you're a Broadway fan, and you're gonna find yourself in New York next year, because it opens next year in New York, and you find yourself in New York with something to see, check out Back to the Future. Also, go see Beetlejuice. That's another good one. I think Beetlejuice is going to start touring within the next year or so. So, Ryan, you and we need to go see that. But
Okay,
Ryan, anybody listening goes to New York, go check out Beetlejuice too. That's another one. I brought it up a lot in this episode, but for good reason. It's great.
Cool.
Anyway, so that's been I think that was longer than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, definitely. But that's. I think just to give you guys an idea of what's coming up, of course, we're probably going to be talking about the movie Nope in our next episode, so stay tuned for that. And then, there's always the Marvel garbage coming out.
The Marvel garbage. Yeah, you guys did 3 episodes while I was out, and in all of them you said Chewie will be back eventually, I think. And I'm back now. I actually just finally got caught up on all of those things that you talked about in those episodes I was absent for. I had to shotgun all of it when I got home from Europe. So maybe in the next Chunk Fire I'll offer some of my insights on that stuff.
Oh, great. Yeah, cool.
Moon Knight and Miss Marvel and Thor. I'm caught up on everything now, finally. So, it's something to contribute to the fire next time. But yeah,
sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Yep. All right. Well, it's time to get going. It's time to hit the road. But
roads. Where we're going, we don't need roads. All right, sorry.
This has been
After the Credits.
a YumChunks podcast.
That's the power of love.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Oh, yumchucks@gmail.com if you wanna, whatever. Send us a thing if you want, and we'll read it on the podcast because we're desperate for listener mail. All right. Thanks for sticking this out with us. Take care, everyone.
All right. Cool.
Say goodbye, Ryan.
Oh yeah. Well, I already. Okay. Bye. I already said goodbye.
All right.